This is Charlie Parsons for Boxing Social in association with Betfred. We've got the pink Stony out for the Zoom here.
Yeah.
By the man in Brisbane, Eddie Hearn. Eddie, how are you, mate?
Firstly, where's Brisbane?
Australia?
Brisbane.
Oh, right.
Right. Secondly, did you actually put that Stony on because we were doing the interview?
Yeah, my boss said wear something rascal.
Okay, nice. No, I gave you the little snippet. You know, I haven't been doing many interviews, but good to talk to you, Parsons. And we're out here working hard in Australia ahead of a big show on Saturday night.
Top man. Well, let's crack straight into it, and we will obviously jump onto Australia and the world of boxing as a whole. But obviously, a lot of people clicking on this video, and it will be for one reason, and that's the whole sort of saga that played out last week with Benn and Chris Eubank Jr. Can we just start on sort of the timeline of events? Because on the Wednesday, we had the real buzz of the red carpet event, and Tuesday was we didn't really do anything. I think you guys had a media day. Wednesday before the workout, it comes out that the Mail have released an article saying that there's a failed test by VADA for a female fertility drug. But a lot of public perception is that the event was pulled because the media found out. You told us at Boxing Social, myself, that you'd known about this failed test for a couple of weeks prior. So what is the timeline of this whole thing?
So I think most of what you said was pretty spot on. Other than the media did not pull this fight, the British Boxing Board of Control refused to sanction the fight, and that was prior to the Daily Mail article. Ultimately, the Daily Mail article was a leak from the decision by the board that they were pulling the fight. It definitely wasn't a coincidence that they made the decision, wrote to me on email at, 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning, and the Daily Mail ran their story at 10:30 or 11, something like that. The two were in tandem. The timeline of receiving the test was about right, 10 days, 2 weeks before. And, when we sign up for VADA through the contracts of the fight, everybody is on that reporting list who is relevant in this situation, which is Matchroom, Benn, Team Benn, Usman, Chris Eubank Jr., Team Eubank, and the British Boxing Board of Control. So when we got that information of the adverse finding in a test, everybody else got the information as well. So, one thing, and I understand people's opinions on this fight, one thing of the, it was tried to be brushed under the carpet, absolutely not. And one of the reasons that some of these things are confidential, and all of UKAD's findings, for example, are confidential, and not necessarily VADA because it's reported to the parties, is to give people the opportunity to go through a process and a hearing and clear their name and be heard without being labelled guilty or a cheat immediately. Okay, so in this situation, however, there was no confidentiality because it wasn't UKAD, and therefore it went to all parties. So at that point, we get it. Obviously, it's a kick in the nuts. We phoned Calla straight away. He gets it. He's in shock. It's a kick in the nuts. Chris Eubank Jr. is alerted immediately. Robert Smith is alerted immediately. The British Boxing Board of Control. And at that point, everyone knows about it. Now, the difficulty with the situation is VADA is not a disciplinary committee. It's just a reporting facility. Okay, we pay a fortune every year to VADA to do additional testing for fighters so that they can report additional test results for camp. I mean, if you look at other big fights, there just isn't VADA testing because it's extremely expensive. But anyway, it was in place for this fight. So at that moment, we speak to the British Boxing Board of Control, and it's very cloudy as to what the process should be. The British Boxing Board of Control only acknowledge UKAD within their rules. And Benn had passed all his UKAD tests in the build-up to that fight and in camp. So we went through this process before with Billy Joe Saunders, where he failed a VADA test, and the board said he's clear to fight in the UK because we don't follow the rules of VADA, so therefore he's not suspended. So the board asked for a lot of information. Callis Allen and Wasserman wanted all the information, all the findings from the lab, from the testing, to one, find out what this thing was, one, find out what the levels were, one, find out, when the timing was, etc., because they're now faced with a difficult decision. And ultimately, it's not down to Matchroom or Wasserman to pull the fight contractually. Under that rule, Chris Eubank Jr. would have to pull that fight and say, no, I terminate the agreement. Once they got the information, which was probably a few days later from the labs, they were happy with, and during this time as well, just to make one thing clear, Conor Benn spoke to Chris Eubank Jr. on the phone and, you know, made him aware of his feelings.
Chris came out and said that there's been no correspondence between them.
So if you watch that interview back, Chris Lloyd says to Chris Eubank Jr., have you spoken to Conor Benn today since the news broke? And he said, no, I haven't. He didn't speak to him that Wednesday. He spoke to him about 10 days before when the news broke to the teams. Okay, so they had a conversation on the phone. Chris Eubank Jr., after, you know, getting the information, and Callum Sowland, after speaking to his doctors and going through the results, were comfortable. Again, I have to be very careful what I say here because of Conor Benn's case, but this will come out that the levels within Conor Benn and the timings around other tests meant that Conor Benn, they were comfortable to move forward with the fight. Ultimately, no one can move forward with the fight without the sanction of the British Boxing Board of Control. So at this point, the board kind of didn't know what to do, but there's no blueprint. You know, legally, they can't suspend Conor Benn. They can't really stop the fight. But at the same time, there is an adverse finding, you know, et cetera, et cetera. This went on for, I want to say, a week, something like that. And then we didn't hear back from the board, probably for 3 or 4 days. There was a lot of communications back from the board to both lawyers of the fighters, speaking to both teams. And eventually on Wednesday morning, we received a letter from the British Boxing Board of Control to say, we feel like it's not in the best interests to sanction this fight, best interest of boxing. This came in a woolly form in terms of the clause because legally they couldn't suspend Conor Benn because he passed all his UCAD tests.
And they don't.
From there,
yeah.
So from there, we spoke to Calla. You know, at this point, because the teams were comfortable to proceed with the fight, the fighters were comfortable to proceed with the fight. The feeling was that we needed to get advice. We needed to speak to the board. We needed to speak to lawyers and see what we were going to do. Then, half an hour later, we all had to turn up to the media workout. And the timing was horrendous. Everyone's head had gone completely. No one really knew what we were going to do. Everyone was talking about new commissions. Everyone was talking about an arbitration or an injunction, etc. We did our media interviews there. Obviously, there was a lot of, comments and sort of opinion that the fight should be cancelled. A lot of people that didn't obviously know the facts because they weren't completely involved. And I understand some of the opinion as well. And ultimately, it was opinion that was eventually shared because after that, we went to Wasserman's office. We all sat down. We went through everything. I spoke to Robert Smith myself. And we were told by our lawyers that you would easily get an injunction or win an arbitration to allow this fight to take place. Or there was the additional option, which I would never do, which was to have a new commission sanction this fight. Both. I mean, certainly their latter was a very easy thing to do to allow the fight to take place. It's controversial, for me, it's not a good look, but it could have very easily be done. We decided with Wasserman that we would not move forward with any of those options. And ultimately, we'd speak to Chris Eubank Jr. and they would decide as a team and we would decide as a team together that the fight should not take place at the moment until Conor Benn had an opportunity to clear his name. And then we came out and we made the statement to say that. We then went to the press conference and it was advised really by the lawyers and the PR people that rather than doing 400 interviews, get up, do a statement and then, talk to the media next week, etc. And the biggest problem now is not saying too much because of the process Conor Benn's about to go through, which is a career-defining process where, I saw Peter Fury's interview last night and, I like what I hear because you've got to understand, we're very close to Conor Benn and I've known him for a long time. And I also appreciate that people will always protest their innocence in certain situations. But having gone through this process, having been aware of the facts and knowing the lab reports and knowing about the levels and knowing about other tests within that period, there is cause for us to believe that Conor Benn is innocent in this situation. Now, I'm letting the situation play out because I want to see that proven, because I feel like people have already made up their mind. And people will be watching this saying, wow, no, Eddie, you would say that. But this ain't me deciding whether he's innocent or not. This is going to be the British Boxing Board of Control, possibly, if they investigate. Could be another body. And the procedure is cloudy, but it's a procedure that's well underway. And there's going to be a lot of big news dropping soon on this because it's a very important matter for Conor Benn. So that's really the process. Ultimately, we were never going to go ahead with the fight without the sanction of the British Boxing Board of Control. And it took us 10 days or 12 days or whatever it is to receive the official ruling on that, which was we won't sanction the fight. At that point, we were left with two options to do the fight, and we decided not to. So that's really the timelines of how everything played out.
Let me ask you regarding the whole VADA and UCAD situation. You did an interview with myself the week prior in Nottingham about the Jean Pascal and Joshua Boazzi situation, which is something that you will have seen has been brought up on social media. You said, why would I put my fighter in the ring with someone who won't sign up to VADA testing? Obviously, in this fight, it's Conor that's failed a VADA test. Obviously, you have to follow the legal protocol. I understand that. You say that you don't believe from the British Boxing Board of Control because they don't recognise VADA. UCAD is their body that they do the testing with, that the right protocol wasn't being followed. But obviously, people are saying it's hypocritical from yourself, you know, when in the past you've said that VADA should be used, and then when
it should be, yeah, VADA should be used. I mean, I don't dispute that, and I wouldn't spend hundreds of thousands of pounds a year using VADA because VADA stopped this fight from happening. So VADA cost us a fortune, but tough shit. VADA found an adverse finding. They were doing their job. There's absolutely no criticism of VADA in this process. VADA is a private agreement between the fighters to ensure that testing is followed and reported to the camps. Now, in this instance, because of the results that were found, the opposing team effectively got their own medical advice, found this not to be performance enhancing, found this to be no physical benefit, and decided to proceed with the bout. It's quite a unique situation.
Parsons, so on a personal level from yourself, the reason that the opposing team and opposing promoters in the Sauerlands were willing to go ahead with this fight was because of the lab results and not necessarily the negative test itself that just says, the test itself that will just say whether it's positive or negative.
Yeah, I mean, that's one for their team, but they got the information. They got the information. They got the knowledge of the UCAD test, the negative test. They got the information of, the substance, the levels. They spoke to their own expert. This wasn't just Kalle Sauerland going, oh yeah, don't worry about it, we'll just move on. This was Kalle looking into the situation, representing his fighter, and the fighter being comfortable. And ultimately, it's always the fighter's decision. But you need to do the work like Kalle did, because every fighter, would generally want to get in the ring and want to get paid. But Kalle went through the process with their lawyers and went through the process with the board to consider whether they wanted to continue with the fight. And the answer was, yes, they did. So, I'm not a believer that we should just ignore VADA, but VADA wasn't ignored. VADA reported a finding, and that finding was investigated internally, it was by the commission, but there's been no hearing so far. And the opposing fighter was prepared to proceed with about. The board was not prepared to sanction about. So I actually get the argument of, but what's the point in proceeding with an adverse finding? Again, information that will unfold to you guys about why this might not be what it seems. And people might raise their eyebrows to that, but let it play out. Let the information come to light and you can make your own decisions. So VADA is certainly not something that we're going to stop using. The reason that we wanted Jean Pascal to sign up to VADA is because he's coming off the back of a heavy failed tests or multiple failed tests. And we wanted to know if he'd failed any more. And there's no commission testing sometimes when you fight abroad. So in this instance, although that fight was rumoured to be happening in the UK, he wouldn't be being tested by UKAD in the build-up to that fight. He's an international fighter. So we wanted him to be tested. And if he can't be tested by UKAD, he wouldn't have been tested at all in that fight. And I wasn't prepared, and Joshua Buatsi wasn't prepared to go into that fight with no testing. Now, don't forget, Conor Benn was being tested by UKAD and tested by VADA. And the VADA was an additional testing process that Conor Benn requested, and Chris Eubank Jr. requested, and the teams requested. Everyone knew they were getting tested. It wasn't like, oh, VADA turned up and what's this? You know, Conor Benn knew about VADA. He wanted VADA testing. So did Chris Eubank Jr. And they were all aware of the testing process.
Right. Let's move on to the B sample, which is something that we've seen in the past. Obviously, it's literally just a set of urine or whatever in one sort of A bit and then the B bit. Very, very rarely do you get a different finding in the B sample to the A sample. So let's just start it for people who maybe don't understand the process that goes on with, you know, when it comes to a B sample. Who is it that has to trigger the B sample to be tested? When will we, as the boxing public, get the results of the B sample?
Okay, so firstly, the B sample, 99% of the time, is exactly the same as the A sample. And in this instance, again, because of information you'll see unearthed, there's every chance that the B sample will be the same as the A sample. Because of the way this sample was tested, and again, I can't go into too much information, we will request that our scientific expert be present at the labs to open the B sample because of things that happened previously. Okay, so that process is being undertaken by the lawyers of Conor Benn. We are not involved in that process, but we will be aware of that process. I don't necessarily, it's not a case of, oh, wait for the B sample to be opened, because like I said, 99% of the time, it's exactly the same as the A sample. I hope it's not, but it's very likely to be the same. But you send a medical, I mean, you could either let them open it, but in a case of this magnitude, you would always hire your own independent medical expert or legal team to go out and be present for that opening. So that's a process with Conor Benn. And all of this stuff, Charlie, will be unearthed, not just for an official hearing, but it's likely that it'll be made public as well by Conor Benn and his legal team. Okay.
Let's talk regarding sort of other failed tests that have come out. There's been a report from the Daily Mail who broke the news the first time regarding tests in the past. Something else that came with that is Frank Warren said that they'd known about this for some time. So whether there's, you know, you'll be able to clarify, but, you know, the perception is at the minute is that there's people in boxing behind closed doors that knew about prior failed tests. What are you able to say on that side of things?
Again, let's just say that there's been a lot of rubbish written, and actually Frank Warren reached out to us, George Warren reached out to say, just to let you know, we did not say that to the Daily Mail. That quote was also taken down by the Daily Mail as well. And again, that is part of the information that you will be given shortly by Conor Benn and his legal team. So there's another issue regarding that article, which is being dealt with by Conor Benn's team. And let's just say, I've read a lot of stuff that's not true. And that will become present to you guys shortly.
Does that entail some sort of legal scenario unveiling with the Daily Mail?
Again, one for Conor Benn. I mean, it was quite unique to receive a message from George Warren to say that was not said to Jeff Powell from Frank Warren. And immediately after that, that quote was taken down from the article.
So something that's been regarded as sort of semi-suspicious online is Dr. Usman. Obviously, he had a public Instagram profile. This went private, then was taken down. His website domain was taken down. Since then, I think an interview that he did, I don't know how long ago, 12 to 18 months ago, I believe, saying that you can get around random drug testing between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. They aren't allowed to come over. Athletes are taking fast-acting testosterone, saying that they'll find every way possible you know, on your side of events, how do you react to those comments when this is a doctor that works with lots of boxers in the sport?
Yeah. So firstly, I don't know Dr. Usman. I think I've spoken to him once in my life. I believe, and again, this is one for Conor Benn, that Conor Benn has met him once in his entire life, and that was in the gym once only, and has not spoken to him before that, has not spoken to him after that. He certainly give him no advice in that respect. Also, Charlie, one thing you've got to understand is that the substance that was found, and again, I don't want to go too deep in this, but it does, you have to ask yourself this question. The substance that was found in an adverse finding is not a substance that you would ever take if you were being tested, right? It would be, you'd have to be basically idiotic. And the scientists that we've spoken to just said that if there's any, like, again, I don't want to go too far into it, but it's not something you'd use that could be disguised. It's something that stays in your system for a huge amount of time if you're taking a course of this stuff. And this is what we're finding out from various different bodies, from various different experts. So I don't know the gentleman. I saw a clip of the video which didn't look particularly good for boxing, but Conor Benn has had no association with him. Again, one for Conor. I believe he met him once, and no previous conversations, no conversations after. So it's not like this guy has been working with Conor Benn. He's been, spending time with him. He hasn't. So another one for Conor, but that's the situation.
Can you understand why people are suspicious, though, when obviously the minute that the Mail's articles reported, he takes everything down, his web domain's gone down, his Instagram's gone down, he's even said that fighters out of camp can take what they want unless they're signed up to the WBC Clean Boxing Committee, which has led to people saying, well, obviously there was a situation that went on where Conor hadn't signed up. Obviously, he then did sign up, and as far as we're aware, nothing came up with that whole situation. But can you see where the suspicions
I
are?
don't know the guy, and I don't think I watched some of his article. I don't think it was a great look, to be honest with you. But what I do know is, Tony Sims, who works with Conor Benn, is, I would trust him with absolutely everything, and he's really feeling the pain of this probably just as much as anyone. And he's aware of every doctor that his fighters work with. And, he will make those decisions. And yeah, there's been no conversations regarding, anything medical in that respect with Dr. Usman. And again, that will be part of Conor Benn's statement next week that will give you all that information.
Cool. Just two more from me on this saga, and then we'll move on to the world of boxing as a whole. Because of the comments from Dr. Usman, it's now been reported that the British Boxing Board of Control will be investigating him. Do you believe that is the correct procedure to follow?
I think, if you're looking at the statements that he's made, I think they're troubling for British boxing, and he's a licence holder. So he may be asked to explain those comments. I really, to be honest, Charlie, don't know a huge amount about him. I know that he worked with some other fighters, Tyson Fury. I know he worked with him for a while as well. I don't know many fighters that we've worked with that have worked with him for a long period of time. So sometimes you make comments publicly that the British Boxing Board of Control will want to call you in for, to explain yourself. I've actually had that myself a few years ago. So I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case.
And then obviously Conor put out a post saying that I hope the apology is as loud as the disrespect. What does that entail?
Well, what that means is what you're about to, get information of in the coming, I don't know, week, 2 weeks, which is obviously, look, we have a lot more information than you do and the public do. There's no point me really canvassing to you about why Conor Benn might be innocent in this situation, because when you see the responses, no one really wants to believe you. No one really is prepared to believe you. So the only way you can do that is with facts and going through a process. The problem is there is really no process in this situation for Conor Benn to go through. He could go to any commission virtually in the world and get a license, and he's not suspended by the British Boxing Board of Control. So, but we'd like to speak to the British Boxing Board of Control because they need to see the facts. And if he is innocent, which many people believe he is, then that needs to come out. And the reasons for that need to come out. This is, trust me when I say, this is by absolutely no means a cut and shut situation. There is a huge amount of information that will come out that does not make sense here. So, but again, people will just say, shut up, Hearn, and roll your eyes and, you know, give me some stick and abuse. But at the end of the day, let the truth come out and you can make your decision from there. I mean, one of the, you know, me and Peter Fury haven't always got on eye to eye, but I like what he said the other day, which was, you have your opinion, have your say. And Conor Benn, again, no one's really going to feel sorry for him right now. You might feel sorry for him if you find out he's innocent. He's going through a situation where he feels like, Jesus, no one's even giving me, no one believes me. You know, the only people that believe him are the people who know him. And so everybody else, he's just thinking, I can't believe the stick I'm getting. Okay, fair enough, I'll take it on the chin. But I hope when the truth comes out, my name is cleared, I get the same respect and same energy, you know. But there's no point me talking about that. You've got to see it, and you're going to be very surprised by some things that come out, I believe.
And just finally, on the world of British boxing as a whole, obviously you said in that press conference that there will be a legal process that you will have on your own with the board, just due to sort of how they dealt with it, and obviously not recognising VADA and UCAD. Does that jeopardise your relationship working forward in the future with them? That any other legal?
Regardless of what people think, I'm probably one of the not few promoters, but one of the promoters that take what the British Boxing Board say on the chin. And we don't always agree with them, but I don't tend to go against them. In this situation, I had the opportunity to do that, and I chose not to. Okay. But one, I feel like there should have been a hearing pre-fight or some kind of situation. And two, you can't deal with one promoter's fighter in one way and then another promoter's fighter in another way. So there's been loads of precedents where this situation's been dealt with and it wasn't followed in that case. And I also feel like time-wise, I mean, look, Parsons, don't forget, when this happens, if the fight's pulled within 24, 48 hours or 72 hours of getting that information, we probably lose half the money that we actually lost because of cancellations, because of venue hire, because of hotels, because of flights, because of everything, right? But the fact that they decided not to sanction it on the Wednesday, 10 or 12 days on, cost us even more money, really. But I also want to say the board were in a difficult position because there's nothing really in their rules that deals with an incident like this, you know, and they don't, like I say, they don't acknowledge VADA. Should they acknowledge VADA? That's another question. And this isn't like, oh, we don't like, but we employ VADA. So I don't mind that. And again, like, there's just not, I agree, there's not enough testing for fights. I mean, look at the other, I mean, I don't know, you can ask the question today. Marshall against Shields. Is there VADA testing? I'm 99% sure there isn't, right? So, because normally they will announce VADA on the Twitter page, welcome to the VADA program. Now, that means that Clarissa Shields has not been tested for this event because she will only be tested by UCAD because she's fighting here, but UCAD won't be testing her when she's in America. In
the States, yeah.
Right? And by the way, I'm sure that Clarissa Shields is a clean athlete, but like, and I'm not saying I feel like
more referencing the inconsistencies being followed.
Yeah, because we're one of the very few people that are paying the money for additional testing.
Yeah.
So, I do want a bit of credit for that because it's costing us money. But at the same time, I understand the criticism of you know, last week because certain people have opinions, and I get those opinions, but others don't know the correct information and which would probably change their opinion. And ultimately, we're only governed by the board's decision. But if people are so concerned about testing in sport, why aren't they paying for this testing and additional testing like we are? But anyway, that's another story.
Right, World of Boxing.
You can ask that question this afternoon, Parsons.
Well, I'm not at Shields Marshall. I'm doing the
Oh,
UK
right, okay.
event in Misfits. So
Right, okay, good. How's that going?
yeah, all right. To be fair, all right.
Yeah, good.
Right, Fury Chisora
Mhm.
is now what's being reported. Will you have any involvement with Derek in this? Is it a one fight, signature that will be done? They're also saying that the stadium will be different. Obviously, I know you 258.
Yeah.
Have a close relationship over the years and still do with Anthony Joshua and everything. And they're also now saying maybe a different stadium other than the Principality. So, would you be able to give us sort of any idea
Yeah,
on
so
looking
I
at?
don't, I mean, I guess, I don't know if we're really Derek's promoter. Not on paper, but he's a friend and he's called me multiple times to ask me for my advice, of which I've given it to him. These guys have been negotiating this fight now for 3 weeks, coming up to 3 weeks. Again, I don't want to go over old ground, but it is a little bit disappointing that we're put on a deadline for Tyson Fury for the Joshua fight, because he must know his next opponent today.
Why do you believe you are under a deadline for that one?
I've no idea. But I don't understand why you're under a deadline for that one, but Derek Chisora is under no deadline whatsoever. And it's now been 3 weeks they've been negotiating for that fight, which is longer than they were negotiating for the Joshua fight. But anyway, listen, mate, that's old ground. No one's going to believe me on that anyway. So now Derek has been made an offer. He's negotiating. I think they'll get there. And I expect that to be Tyson Fury's next opponent, or Manuel Charr, but probably Derek Chisora. In terms of the venue, I know they're no longer not going to Millennium Stadium. I don't know the venue. All I saw was Frank's interview to say it's another stadium. I don't know what stadium that could be unless they choose to go outdoors, which would be wild in December. But,
yeah.
Quite
else, to be honest.
Yeah, so I don't know. But that's where they're up to. It's not done, or it wasn't done, I think, yesterday. But, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Chisora got that fight at all.
Perfect. Ed, can I just ping you over another? Just picking this back up because Zoom had like a certain limit on the amount of time that we speak.
People will think you've been editing the video, Parsons.
Yeah. No, we have not been editing anything. Right, Jake Paul lawsuit. Any updates that you can give us?
No, with the lawyers. I mean, I saw Jake's comments the other day. No, I mean, that's a process. Obviously, it's been filed, and they'll have to respond to that case. And yeah, we'll. I'm sure the media will be on top of it once things pick up pace. But yeah, going through the process, it's been filed, and it's got to be answered.
Obviously, it was reported. I think someone said like it would be over 70,000 and up to 100 million. I can't imagine it will be the $100 million dollar figure, but who knows? Like I say, I'm not a lawyer, but just in
not?
No, surprisingly not. I'm a man.
Didn't get a law degree, Parsons.
No, I did. I got an A in law A level, but not a degree.
Did you? Fair play.
Yeah. I don't even know what I was going to ask. That was completely thrown me off. Yeah, are we allowed? Are we allowed to sort of know the figure that's involved, or is that all?
No, because it will be down ultimately to the court to decide. I mean, 75,000 is a jurisdictional minimum.
Yeah.
And that's why that number was put out. But up to 100 million is from our side. And, you have to understand that the levels that we play at corporately and the size of the business and the irreparable damage comments of like that could have to the business. So, yeah. Again, not something I can talk too much on. I can't talk too much on these situations that are about to be heard or go before a courtroom, but it wasn't something we were prepared to accept.
Can I ask you something that I don't think's been brought up for a while? Lawrence Okoli, obviously everything that went on between the two of you and the tweets that he put out, and then obviously I'm sure we will hear the full story unfold at some point, but where are we at with that? Obviously, I know he has one fight more on his deal with Matchroom, but will he fight again with Matchroom? What is the current situation?
Yeah, exactly what you just said, Parsons. He has one fight left on his deal. He had an approach from Sky Sports to be the face of boxing for Sky Sports. I saw the very nice proposal that they sent him, and there was some back and forth between us and Sky, and they acknowledged that he's got a fight left under the deal. So did his lawyer. And that's where we're up to, really. So hasn't been a whole host of discussions. He was supposed to fight on the Anthony Joshua card in Saudi in August. Obviously, that didn't happen. So we'll have to see what's next.
How soon can we sort of wait for news on this, you know, behind closed doors, what is unfolding?
I'd like to see Lawrence back in the ring. I think, he last boxed, in February against Sislak. So we're now in October. So yeah, I'm sure he'll be looking to fight before the year's out.
Would Sky have to, if he does go to Sky Sports, that's assuming, and Boxer, would they have to make an offer to buy him out of the contract that you've got with him?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, if he wanted to box on that platform, then we would have to agree for that to happen, because he has one fight remaining on his deal.
Anthony Joshua, the date given was December 17. I believe now that there's reports that it may be January or February. The name that was being thrown about was Chris Arreola. I believe you've come back and said it's not.
Yeah, that was from you lot.
Not me, so.
Well, Boxing Social. But anyway, it's just another example, Parsons, of sometimes I read things and just think, and it's like people just assume it's true. So all of a sudden, he's fighting Chris Arreola. Chris Arreola's name has not even been mentioned in a conversation with Anthony Joshua, with 258. I've never spoke to Chris Arreola about the Anthony Joshua fight. He's not fighting Chris Arreola. I mean, I don't think it's a terrible fight, but he's just not even been on the mind for that fight. So in terms of the date, December 17 has always been our expected date, and it's always the date that we asked for with Tyson Fury. There is a chance he could still fight on that date. There's also a chance he could push it to January. Undecided, mate, to be honest with you. But obviously, December 17, we would look to make a decision in the next 2 weeks. But there is a chance it could extend to January, maybe early Feb, but we want to get him as active as possible.
In terms of opponent-wise, you've said before, like a top 15 opponent. Is that top 15 with a governing body, or a sort of more globally recognised top 15, you know, someone that would feature in the top 10 of the ring or something?
Yeah. I mean, I think the answer to your question is, I don't know.
You know, him in the ring with Chris Lovejoy, please.
No, you're not. But I don't think Chris Lovejoy is top 15.
Oh, he's not.
Anymore. So, no, he's not. But there are some fighters that are in the top 15 that I think people would be disappointed with as an opponent. Yeah. At the same time, the key here is to be active. We want a good, credible opponent that AJ can work with his training team, move forward, and chase down another shot at the world heavyweight title. So I would like to see him active, whether that's December or January, and then out again, you know, like, I don't know, 3-4 months later.
Queensbury tried to make the fight between Daniel Dubois and Lucas Brown. Lucas Brown was not sanctioned by the British Boxing Board of Control, put out a message, you know, with how angry he was at the British board for not sanctioning. Is it the right decision that Lucas Brown wasn't sanctioned to fight Daniel Dubois?
I don't know. I mean, it's a dangerous fight for Lucas Brown, but at the same time, we tried to make a fight with Lucas Brown and we got turned down for that fight. I think it was with Alan Babbage, and that was about a year ago. Was it Babbage? Yeah, I think it was. And the board said no, because Lucas Brown is 43 or something like that. Yeah. And generally, they don't accept fights or sanction fights where the opponent is over 40. I know he's coming off a decent win, Lucas Brown, but I don't. I mean, if they're going to turn down Lucas Brown against Alan Babbage, they're obviously going to turn down Daniel Dubois against Lucas Brown as well.
Babbage, on the topic of him, I believe I've seen that he's been ordered to fight Oscar Rivas. When can we?
Correct. Yeah, that's correct. We've been speaking to Yvonne Michelle. We're waiting for an offer for that fight. We'd also like to do that fight in the UK. So negotiations are underway for Rivas against Babbage for the WBC Bridgerweight title.
Would that potentially be a little bit too soon to get on the Dillian White undercard?
No, not necessarily. I mean, that's obviously he's with Dillian White. We're looking to do Fabio Wardley against Gorman on that card. Great fight. And if we can do Babbage against Rivas, that would be a hell of an undercard. Right,
I'll just rattle through these now because we have been speaking for some time. Deontay Wilder makes his ring return this weekend against Robert Helenius. You You know, just sort of your thoughts on that, and a fight that's being spoke about is a clash of the two American heavyweights, Deontay Wilder and Andy Ruiz, potentially in the future.
Yeah, I saw. I got asked about that fight, Parsons, and Boxing Scene did an article today going Hearn picks Ruiz to beat Wilder, and like Ludabella posted going, why is his opinion being reported as a headline? It's ridiculous. Why on that? It's like, mate, I didn't do a press release to say Andy Ruiz will beat Deontay Wilder. I just got asked about it. Now, the fact that I obviously drive numbers, Parsons, you know, that's another story. What can I say? But in answer to your question, I think Wilder Helenius is a good fight. I think it's a very credible comeback fight for Deontay Wilder. Is it a dangerous fight? I mean, look, Helenius is no mug, but Chisora beat him. Dillian White won every round against him. He can outbox Wilder at times, but I think Wilder punches very hard, and I think Wilder will eventually stop him between 6 and 9. Might be a bit tricky to start with. And I love Andy Ruiz against Deontay Wilder. I think it's a tremendous fight, and I do think Andy Ruiz wins that fight. In all honesty, I think he causes taller men real problems with his movement, and I think if he hits Deontay Wilder on the chin, I think he'll knock him out. And he's got a good chin, Andy Ruiz. But Wilder can take anyone out at any time, and I'm very excited to see Deontay Wilder back in the ring because I think it's great for boxing that he's returning.
Callum Smith, a fighter who is obviously waiting his shot at Artur Beterbiev. We've now seen that, you know, this may be something for January, February against Anthony Yard. First things first, a lot of discussion that's been thrown up in the air is, you know, I'm not going to sit here and pretend I know exactly immediately who Beterbiev's friends with on the whole Russian side of things, but there has been criticism and people saying that he won't actually be allowed to come over and fight. Look, Callum's not going to want to be a sitting duck. We've found out that, you know, the Josh Buatsi fight isn't something that's going to happen. So where does Callum go opponent-wise? You know, I think we spoke before, maybe someone like a Marcus Brown. You know, what?
Yeah, I think if January 28th is correct in terms of Yard against Beterbiev, then Callum Smith's earliest opportunity to fight against Beterbiev is going to be the summer. So he's going to fight beforehand, December, January, around that time. Listen, I like the Buatsi fight because I think it's a great fight. But ultimately, the deal would have to make sense and the numbers would have to make sense for both guys, particularly Callum Smith, who's been an established world champion, that wants to go on and fight and become a two-weight world champion. So the Buatsi fight is a dangerous fight, but it's a good fight. And it's a big domestic fight that could generate a lot of money. So it's definitely something we'll talk to Callum's team about, but I know his mind is focused on preparing for Artur Beterbiev.
Billy Joe Saunders has been sort of eyeing a potential return. I spoke to Louis Edmondson yesterday, who's managed by him, and looks like he will be back and coming. I believe he's still got a fight with yourself and Matchroom. Is this something that you're working on currently?
Yeah, we've had a few chats, nothing major. I mean, I think, you know, Billy's one of those guys that needs the date to focus on, but at the same time, we don't really know when he'll be ready for that date. I'm not sure whether we'll work together again, but, you know, I think Billy Joe Saunders is a fantastic fighter. I would like to see him back in the ring, and we'll see what happens in the future.
Picking up once again, obviously the Zoom keeps cutting off, but Matchroom Australia, obviously you're there this week. Sky Nicholson featuring on the card, obviously a new market that you're wanting to broaden with. Paro Jarvis, Dempsey McKean on there. I imagine, you know, you've come over there saying that you want to work with promoters. You know, it's not something that you want to go over and tarnish relationships over there. You want it to all be amicable, and that's sort of, this is your progression with Australia.
Yeah, it's so exciting. I mean, it's good timing to go to Australia with everything going on back home after the Conor Benn fight, because they couldn't be nicer to me over here, Parsons. I mean, I'm like a hero over here. They can't believe we're here. I'm so excited to be here. It's a great feeling. Like, fighters are buzzing, they're happy, they're appreciative. We've got an incredible main event. Liam Paro, 22-0 against Brock Jarvis, 20-0. Paro's #1 in the world. Brock Jarvis is with Jeff Fennick, looks like a complete wrecking machine. Dempsey McKean, you know, if he can win this fight, you're going to see him against the likes of Dillian White, Chisora, maybe even AJ at the beginning of the next year. Sky Nicholson, you know, who is looking better and better in the gym. You know, he's progressing as a pro. And I think she's 2 or 3 fights away from fighting for the world title. She fights for her first championship, the Commonwealth title, against another Australian. Look out for Abdullah Mayweather against Matteo Tapia. It is an absolute war. There is 7 title fights on this card. So 7 fights on the card, 7 title fights, only 6 losses in the entire card. Parsons, it's mental over here. They'll fight anyone, right? I've got a debutant who's had 120 amateur fights.
Yeah, fighting 7-0.
He's fighting a 9-0 prospect, right? I've got another guy, he's like 4-0. He's fighting a 5-0. 5-1 against 4-0. Like, they're just diving in and they're right up for wars. So whatever you do, tune into DAZN, and it's going to be a great crowd, great atmosphere, and the first of many shows in Australia.
Edward X Parsons, what a link up. Thank you very much for your time.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers,
See you later. Bye, mate.